Alright, I am Chronic Mayhem, and I am back with another controller review. Today, we are taking a look at the Bigbig Wong Blitz 2. Let's get into it. Alright, first and foremost, Bigbig Wong did send me these controllers to review. They do not get to see this video before I post it. No agreements were made about what I can and cannot say, and all the thoughts and opinions in this video are my own. These are the first controllers I've ever used by Bigbig Wong. Bigbig Wong is another budget Chinese controller manufacturing company. What makes these interesting though is one, it comes in two different versions. It comes in a more traditional potentiometer joystick version and a newer technology TMR version. Both versions are also advertised with 2000 Hz wireless and wired polling. All the buttons are mechanical, and you're also getting turbo, macros, and gyroscope. But before we get into all of those features, let's see what you get in the box. Both of these controllers are going to come in a box with a sleeve like this. This is obviously for the TMR version right here. It's a pretty handsome looking box. Glossy front here. The back is entirely in English, which I like to see. The side you have a little bit of Chinese, but it is translated down here on the bottom, but none of this is really that important information. You have the 2000 Hz wired and wireless polling rate, 1000 Hz gyroscope motion control, 16 mechanical buttons. You have 4 additional buttons, 2 on the back and 2 on the, I guess, front near the bumpers and triggers. And it's for PC and mobile, but you can also use it on Switch as well. Inside that sleeve, you will get a all-white box. I will give Bigbig Wong some credit here. This seems to be all recyclable material, which is great. You'll have your manual. The controller will come with these 2 foam rings on it so that the analog sticks don't get all wacky in shipping. You will get a nice braided USB-C to USB-A cable with the Bigbig Wong logo on the USB-A end here when we put it down here so it's a little more in focus. And you will get 4 additional analog stick caps. The controller will come with the small stick caps already installed. You will get 2 tall stick caps here and 2 medium stick caps here. So I like the additional options. You'll also get a replacement D-pad if you want more of a wheel instead of the cross that comes pre-installed on the controller. The manual for the controller is all black and white, which is fine. You don't really need a fancy manual. And it has all the button layouts like you would expect. It gets into how to activate the turbo and the macro recording, how to configure all the onboard profiles, how to change the dead zone, how to reprogram the controller without using the software. There is software for this controller, and we will take a look at that as well. And it comes in English, Chinese, and Japanese. So now talking about the aesthetics of this controller here, I think I had to do this joke because as soon as I took these out of the box, this is the first thing it made me think of. This is my 1-year-old daughter's toy, and all the bright colors of these controllers, this looks like a Toys R Us, Toys R Us kids toy controller. As soon as I took it out of the box, this is the first thing I thought of. So the controllers only come in all white, blue and gray, and out of the two, I think the blue one looks a little bit more kiddish, just because I think it's another bright color on there, even though I love blue. I kind of wish that blue was on the accent rings as well, or the gray was on the accent rings, having the random orange there. I don't really think it helps the aesthetics. I get it's Bigbig Wong's one of their company colors, but I've never been a fan of companies forcing their predetermined company colors on the consumers. But anyway, I'm not the biggest fan of the aesthetics. I do wish it came in black.
Does it come in black?
On the website, the Blitz 1 does come in black, and that thing looks sick compared to these. So hopefully a black version will come out at some point. Moving on, the multicolored buttons, I don't think really does it any favors either. I get it's trying to look like a stock Xbox controller with those, but all the higher end Xbox controllers you see usually have all one color for these, just to make it look a little bit more mature or grown up, and I kind of wish they had gone that route as well. It's not the biggest deal. I mean, aesthetics of a controller are, completely an individual thing anyway. The look of this is not really my taste. Moving on, they do have I don't want to call it RGB. So when you turn the controllers on, you do have these green lights here and in the logo. I did not find anything in the software about being able to change these, so they are just permanently green, adding to another bright color on there. But I do wish you did have the option to change these to like a blue or something else, just basic RGB on here. If you're gonna have these extra lights down here, I think they should be programmable at the very least. Throughout this review, we are going to focus on the TMR version here for two reasons. One, because it's the newer technology. I think it's a lot more interesting. And the second reason is this is the one that was sent first to me, the potentiometer version. But when it arrived, the USB here was completely destroyed. Let's see if I can refocus. There you go. See, so once I told Bigbig Wong that this controller arrived damaged, they sent me over the TMR version. It still turns on and everything, as you see, but once the battery runs out, this is going to become a paperweight because I obviously can't charge it, and I have no interest in buying the dock for it. So we will be focusing on the TMR version for this review. So this one did arrive in perfect working order. It's got these nice rubber grips on the side. They are nice and comfortable. They do feel good to hold. Comfort-wise, again though, my other complaint is these grips here, I feel are a little bit too skinny. They're thinner than a standard Xbox controller, and if you have a really loose grip, they're fine. But if you when I really want to try to grip my controller, I feel like I'm missing material here. I feel compared to a standard Xbox controller or like a FlyDigi or something that copies more of the Xbox shape, these handles here definitely feel thinner than a standard controller.
Not too small, it's too thin, okay?
So that might be an issue for you. If you have bigger hands, it might be the bigger issue. Playing for long periods of time, I did start to become a little bit uncomfortable just because of how skinny I feel these are. And this is a very flat edge on the inside, which I'm not sure really does it any favors in that. But so when it comes to the comfort of this controller, it leaves a little bit to be desired for me. Moving on to some of the features that make this Pro controller a Pro controller, let's start talking about the back buttons, which I think are one of the most important features of a aftermarket controller. So for this controller, you're only getting 2 back buttons. The placements of them is fine. The way I use it, I hit it with this part of my finger right here. See if I can show you right there. So like that, you can do it with your fingertip, but I think if you're moving your fingertip up here, that's just going to add to the discomfort. So I use them like that. You do only have 2 on the back. You do have 2 extra here on the front, and these may make you think of the Razer Wolverine V3 Pro or Tournament. I just reviewed it, but what I've noticed from these is the placement of them is kind of awkward. They do look like they're in the same plate as the Razer Wolverine, but what I've noticed is to activate those, I have to move my entire hand over so that I can get over the trigger and activate those. If I don't move my hand over and I try to activate those like this, I activate these triggers 100% of the time, every time.
60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
You know, so it's the placement of these, it's nice they're there, but I'm not too thrilled about the placement of them. I don't know if they have to be more, taller. That would probably help a little bit too, so that I can I have to like cock my finger up like this, just so I can get them without accidentally activating the trigger. Because if you do this, these clicky triggers, they get activated every time unless I make an intentional effort to move my finger and curve it so that I can get to those without activating the triggers. Speaking of the triggers, so this is the first controller I've ever seen that has only digital triggers for a pre-manufactured controller. Now I know through some of the custom controller companies before you were able to switch between analog and the digital triggers, like on the PS5 and the Xbox controllers. You could pay to have the triggers turned into strictly mouse click digital triggers. This is the first controller I've seen that's pre-manufactured, not custom, to go that route where there's no analog function on the triggers at all. So that was an interesting choice.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
And I will show in Gamepad Tester that these are strictly on-off digital clicky triggers. There is no analog function with these at all. So that's already going to, I think, make this controller completely unusable for driving games, etc. And it's the same on the non-TMR version as well. These are not analog, they are clicky. Only difference between these two controllers is TMR, not TMR. So that's the only version. I mean, the only difference between these two. Looking at these triggers from purely a mechanical and digital standpoint, they are very clicky. The travel is a little, so it clicks right there, right? So it does have a little bit of travel to it. It's not quite as short as like the Vader 4 Pro or something like that, but it does have a fair amount of click. There is little to no post travel though, so that's good. Right when you get to the click, there is just, I guess, a tiny bit of post travel, but it's not the end of the world. I do wish you were able to switch between analog and the digital though. That was an interesting choice on Bigbig Wong's part. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, this controller has 16 mechanical buttons. So you have the triggers, the bumpers, these extra mechanical ones here, the back buttons, all the face buttons, all the D-pad, and that's all 16. So you have the face buttons right here. These are also mechanical. They're I don't want to call them loud. They're a little bit louder than I have on some other controllers, and we will do a sound test later on all of the buttons of this controller before we get into the software and the Gamepad Tester stuff and all that. They are very tactile though. You do hear a sharp click when you are at the activation point, so you know exactly when you were hitting them. I really have no complaints about the back buttons. I mean, not the back buttons, the face buttons here. They are a little loud, but they're not like ridiculously loud like on the old Razer controllers. You also have mechanical buttons on the D-pad here as well, and it does pop off if I can get it to pop off. There we go. It's not magnetic like on the Elite Series 2, for example. It has little tabs, and then you can use the wheeled D-pad to pop on there if you would prefer that kind of D-pad on here. Except it only goes on one way. See this like little line right there? I just tried to put it on the wrong way and it did not go. So there we go. There we go. You gotta make sure it clicks in there for it to stay. Now, once you have the wheel on there, you can do a circular motion here and get all the contacts like that, if that's the kind of D-pad you would prefer, but it's nice we have both options in there. Just like replacing the D-pad, you can replace the stick caps as well. The rubber on these is actually really nice. I like them. And I like that you have a metal around the caps here as well. It is a little loose. You can kind of do this with it. But once it's on there, I don't think it's going to move around at all. I like having metal around the base of the stick cap, so there's no threat of plastic on plastic kind of grinding like you see on the Turtle Beach Elite Stealth, whatever it's called. How those sticks grind up against the rings and then the little particles get down in the sticks and it screws it all up and it's awful. I really like the touch of having metal around the sticks. So I said earlier you get two tall ones here. I like to have a tall on the right side, and they have these little clips right here. You just line them up and they pop on there just like on other controllers. And now I have a short on the left and a tall on the right. You also have medium as well if you would like to use those. But I think short and tall, short on the left, tall on the right is probably the best option for most shooters. This controller has turbo and macro options. This is the button here for activating your turbo. You hold it down for 2 seconds plus the button you want it to be linked to. and then that is how you set the turbo, or I like to call cheater mode, because if you're using the turbo in a multiplayer game, I don't like you, because you're using hardware to cheat. If you're using it in a single player mode, fine, knock yourself out. You also have macros here as well, same story. I think you should only be using those in single player mode. You'll have a remap button here, so you don't have to use the software to remap all the different buttons, and you have a config button down here as well. So moving on to the real star of the show with this controller is the TMR joysticks, which I think anyone looking at this controller should really only be considering the TMR version, because it is the latest and greatest, newest technology to hit the controller market. So now we have traditional potentiometer joysticks, we have Hall Effect, which have been out for about a year or two now, and now TMR, which is the new kid on the block. So technology wise, I will put descriptions on the bottom here that describes the difference between all the technologies, but basically traditional potentiometer joysticks work by having a variable resistor where a sliding contact adjusts the resistance in the joystick, allowing for a precise voltage control. Now, those sliding contacts can wear down over time, and that is how you get stick drift. The constant threat of eventually getting stick drift with the traditional potentiometer joysticks is why Hall Effect became a thing. So Hall Effect joysticks work by measuring a voltage induced across a conductor when a magnetic field is applied perpendicular to the current flow, and that change in voltage is how the controller determines the positioning of the joystick. And it does this with no physical contacts happening within the controller module or the joystick module, which is why stick drift is far less likely than on a traditional joystick. I won't say it's impossible, because it still technically can happen, especially if the repositioning spring inside the joystick does loosen up, then you could potentially get stick drift, but it is far less likely than on a traditional potentiometer controller joystick. And now the new kid on the block is TMR, which stands for tunneling magnetoresistance. And the way these TMR sticks work is they utilize the quantum mechanical tunneling effect to detect a very small change in magnetic fields with high sensitivity. That, of course, is the theory and the reasoning for TMR sticks. They also consume far less power than a Hall Effect stick, so the battery theoretically should last longer as well. So that is the difference between the three technology types. Hall Effect and TMR, I think, are the future and what everyone should really be looking for when they're buying a new controller right now, in my opinion. Now that we've discussed all the different technologies that can be in controllers, let's head over to Gamepad Tester. Here we are on Gamepad Tester. So first thing I wanted to show you is, as I mentioned before, how the triggers have no analog function at all. I am now activating the triggers here, as you see, and it's just 1 or 0. Typically on a controller, you will see the little bar next to that B7 or B6. It will go up and down depending on the analog value that you're using, but these triggers being strictly mouse click mechanical, they only have on and off. The resting value for these sticks is about perfect. They are stopping at 0.000002 every single time, which is fantastic. Now we will test the circularity. We will go nice and slow. Let's get that little bit there. We got 2.5 on the first test and 2.8 on the other stick. Let's clear it out and do one more time. And we will test that out. See if we can get that little bit right there, so we can get that 2.5 again. There we go. And let's do again on the other stick, and we got 2.8. So that is pretty close to perfect. Any value below 10% is really good. Really, any value on a potentiometer joystick, anything below 20% is acceptable. Anything below 10% is what you really want to see, especially for sticks that are programmed to be a circle like these are. It's a little bit different on sticks programmed to be more of a rectangle. Those values will always be a little bit higher, but that does not necessarily mean the stick is more inaccurate. But 2.8 2.6 and 2.8 for values on these sticks is excellent, and the resting values are great. So that's all fantastic to see. So you shouldn't have a problem with accuracy with these sticks. We are now going to test the polling rate of this controller to see if that 2000 hertz advertised is accurate. So first we will put in the needed information to start the test. We're going to do 6,000 tests, and we're going to do it on the left stick. And now we will start testing. So at the end of the test, max polling rate 2000 as advertised. The average polling rate was 1988 with a 99% stability. So that's excellent. It seems this controller is behaving polling rate wise exactly how it is advertised on the box and on the website. So it is indeed reaching that 2000 hertz roughly rate. And we can see here by the latency, so 2000 hertz polling rate should translate to about half a millisecond, and you can see here that is what we are getting for the vast majority of the values. We really don't have any outliers, which is why we're getting a 99% stability rating at the bottom. So that's really fantastic. Now, how much stock do I put into a 2000 hertz polling rate? I don't think you're ever really going to notice difference between 1000 versus 2000. 1000 you should be getting about 1 microsecond for latency, and we're talking microseconds here. So no human being, I think even the best pros in the world, are really not going to notice the difference between 1000 and 2000, let alone 500 and 1000. To me, I like to see at least 1000. You know, it makes me feel that I have a high quality product and that I'm getting a good latency. 2000, I think it's a nice to have, but I wouldn't go out and just buy this controller strictly because it's 2000 hertz polling rate. That being said, it's clearly not just saying that and not actually achieving it. The controller is providing a stable 2000 hertz polling rate as advertised. So that's great to see. The Big Wong software for this controller. Once you have everything plugged in, you just hit connect device, start settings, and this is pretty basic software, but I necessarily don't think that's a bad thing. It's nice having kind of some simple software that just does everything that you want. Now, one little pet peeve right at the beginning is I'm using the gray controller, and when you start it up, it's showing the blue one here, and it's showing a orange logo here and blue lights here, which I have not figured out how to get on this controller, because as you see, when you start it up, all the lights are green, and there's nowhere in this software to affect RGB or lighting. So that's a little weird and kind of something I would like them to fix. But here in the settings, you can see you can change between X input, PS5 or Switch, and this is the first controller I've seen where you can change that in the software, so that's pretty cool. You can change its accuracy settings right here. You can change from 2000 to 100, 1000 or 500 if you would like. You can calibrate the controller right here in the software. You can remap your left stick to act like a D-pad, and the product manual is also in the software as well. You can update your firmware for the controller and the dongle here as well. And you can go here and you can do all your macros or your turbos like that in the software as well. And you can go in here and you can map all of your back buttons, face buttons, and those extra buttons near the shoulders as well. So if you do not want to download the software, you can do all the settings for this controller right on the controller. But if you want the simplicity, it's all right here, and you can just click here, remap all the buttons that you want to whatever you want, and then you're good to go. And you can also click here which one you want to be turbo. It's just a simple click here instead of trying to like hold down the button and hold down whatever button you want to be turbo. You can just click here and be done with it. So pretty straightforward software. I think it's nothing special, but I am glad it's here. Like I said, I do wish it showed the correct controller at the startup on the little preview here. I wish you saw the one you actually have, and I wish there was some type of RGB control for these lights on here so that it can actually be what you want it to be instead of just this green that you can't do anything with. So I think this controller has a lot going for it. It has a lot of pros, but it definitely has some cons as well. One con I did not mention at the beginning is these top buttons right here. The symbols on them are impossible to see. It's gloss white on top of matte white, so you can only see them. I don't even think I'm going to let you be able to see them in this video. The only way I can see them is I have to tilt them so that the light is shining off the glossy part here to be able to tell what these are at all. And on the website, if you actually, let's go back real quick. You can see here, it's showing gray symbols on these buttons, but when you go to the actual controller, they're gloss white on white, making them impossible to see. You know, on all these controllers, those 3 buttons in particular are in different locations on every controller that you use. So not being able to see the symbols as well is extremely frustrating for me. So my cons are, it's only available in white. There's only 2 back buttons. These are in kind of a hard to reach location, I guess I would describe it. Here is fine, like on the Wolverine Pro, they're in the same general place as well, but they're much easier to hit without activating the trigger. So if they were shifted down, or I'm not sure, but these location needs to change slightly. The other con is these triggers are not analog, they're only digital, and you cannot switch them to an analog connection. It's only digital, that is the only option. So that's all the cons. The pros, though, are it's build quality wise, it's a very solid controller. There's no flex. I don't think it's going to break immediately if I drop it. Now, quality assurance, I can't speak on that since I did receive one controller that was busted. The USB port was completely destroyed. So I don't know if that speaks to Bigbig Wong's quality assurance, but at least 1 out of the 2 I received was in perfect working condition. The TMR sticks are excellent. They seem very accurate. There's plenty of mechanical switches. Basically, all the buttons you would be using in a game on this controller are mechanical, including the shoulders here, which is kind of rare to see on a lot of these Pro controllers. A lot of them make these shoulder buttons membrane, while they make the face buttons and the triggers mechanical and the D-pad mechanical, but they still like to leave those membrane for whatever reason. It's nice that those are also clicky mechanical here as well. The software is pretty good. I have really no complaints about the software, except there's no RGB function on there, but I mean, that is what it is. At the price of $79.99 for this controller, I feel like I would not be a great reviewer if I did not also bring up the Vader 4 Pro from FlyDigi. This controller is also $79.99. You're getting 4 back buttons. You're getting triggers that you can switch from analog to digital. It's a more traditional Xbox shape, and you can change the tension of the sticks. These are Hall Effect sticks, but these are really good Hall Effect sticks. Some of the best Hall Effect sticks I've used on a controller yet. You're still getting mechanical buttons on all the face plates, except these are a little quieter than these. They're about the same volume. And you're getting a great D-pad as well. So for the exact same price, the only advantage the Blitz 2 has over the Vader is the 2000 hertz polling versus the 1000 wired and wireless polling. But again, I can't put that much stock into that because I don't think anyone is going to really be able to benefit from 2000 hertz polling, especially when you start to think to really take advantage of that, you have to have a monitor that can also match that latency and that refresh. So you have to have a sub 1 millisecond monitor to even really take advantage of the 2000 hertz polling and the 0.5 response time latency. If you don't have a monitor that can match that, then it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter at all because you're not going to be able to see and react to it at that fast anyway. The other advantage the Blitz 2 has over the Vader are the newer technology of the TMR sticks, but the Vader has kind of its own unique Hall effect, which it does not have that contact spring in here, the repositioning spring in these Hall effect sticks. So these theoretically should be the most reliable Hall effect sticks on the market. So between these two with the 4 back buttons and the switching triggers, For the price of $79.99, I still have to recommend the Vader 4 Pro. I think it's the better value for that price. Now, if the Blitz 2 drops down to like $50 around there, then I think this would be a killer deal. But the TMR and the 2000 hertz alone, to me, are not enough to dethrone the current champion at this price range, the FlyDigi Vader 4 Pro. So that is going to do it for me for this review. I want to thank Bigbig Wong for sending me out this controller. I do really like this controller. I definitely did have some cons, but overall I think it is a great controller. I am Chronic Mayhem. If you liked this video and you would like to see more gaming technology reviews from me, please hit like and subscribe so you will not miss my next video. Make sure the bell is clicked as well so you'll get a notification the next time I upload. I also stream on Twitch as well. A link to that will be appearing right here on the bottom of the screen. I will be leaving a Amazon affiliate link for this controller at the bottom. It just kind of helps out the channel for when I do buy my own products, which is 99% of the time, so that I can keep making videos. And links to all my social medias will be in the description as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, hit like and subscribe. It will help out the video. I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers. We're almost there. We're about 330, so we got a little ways to go, but we're making progress. But thank you guys again for watching this video, and I hope to see you all next time. Peace.